So this is the overall process of cellular respiration, and it happens in three main steps. And they all kind of rely on each other to kind of get to the star of the show here that's going to make the most ATP for us. Because remember, the purpose of cellular respiration is to make that ATP, make that energy for the cell. So the first step in the process is called glycolysis. And this process, as you can see, actually happens outside of the mitochondria. It happens in the cytoplasm. Cytosol is actually another word for cytoplasm, but as long as you can remember cytoplasm, which is important because glycolysis can happen in any organism, including prokaryotes like bacteria that don't have a mitochondria. So glycolysis is what actually makes ATP for those organisms. And they're really small, so this amount of ATP actually works for them. But it's important that glycolysis happens in the cytoplasm for that reason, because it can happen in any organism. Well, why is glycolysis important? Three things are going to be made by glycolysis. One, as you can already see, is 2-ATP. So there's some energy that the cell can use, okay? It also is going to make this thing called NADH, and it actually makes two of them as well. And then it's also going to make 2-pyruvate molecules. That is going to go to the next step, pyruvate, P-Y-R, that's an R there. So it makes 2 NADHs, 2 pyruvates, and 2 ATPs. This is just going to be used for energy. These two things are actually going to be needed to pass on to the next stages. So the 2 pyruvate is going to be needed in step 2, and then NADH is actually going to carry electrons to the electron transport chain. So this NADH is just an electron carrier. Okay, so this is why glycolysis is important. Not so much the ATP, I mean, that's great, we get some extra ATP, but these two things are what's important with glycolysis. We get 2 pyruvate to move on to the next step, and we get 2 electron carriers to take electrons to the electron transport chain. That is why glycolysis is important. The second step is called the Krebs cycle. And the Krebs cycle is also going to produce a couple ATP, but you're also going to get more electron carriers here. And this is what's important about the Krebs cycle, is these electron carriers. You get NADH and this other electron carrier called FADH2. The amount of these is actually more than you get from glycolysis. So we actually get 6 NADHs and we get 2 FADH2s. So you can see you get a lot more electron carriers here. And again, this is going to go into the last step, which is going to be called the electron transport chain. So this is why we need electrons, because to get this chain to actually work, you need electrons. Obviously, it's in the name. The first 2 steps actually set up for that last step. So the importance, again, of the Krebs cycle is to make these electron carriers to send to the electron transport chain. Okay, this is the star of the show. This is where it's at. This is what we need to get to, because here we get 34 ATP. This is where we get the bulk of our ATP. And humans, like us, need this much ATP to survive. If we didn't get to this step, we actually wouldn't make it, because this amount of ATP that comes from glycolysis and Krebs cycle wouldn't be able to keep us alive. So this step is hugely important. All right? The purpose of this step is just to make this. That's where we're getting that bulk of that ATP. Okay? So let me go through really quickly one more time. So you got glycolysis is the first step. You do get a couple ATP from that, but the biggest importance of this is to make those 2 pyruvate that goes to the Krebs cycle to keep everything going, and the electron carriers that are going to bring electrons to the electron transport chain. Krebs cycle, second step, uses that pyruvate that came from glycolysis, and what it does that's so important is makes more electron carriers to go to the electron transport chain. Because again, we need electrons here. This is what's going to produce the bulk of our ATP, which is the overall goal of cellular respiration. So there you go. Let me know if you have any questions.